So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Narvi-Beslin. I'll be your host for this webinar. Just before we start, I would like just to tell you if you have questions or anything you would like to ask us, anything technical as well as on the content that we'll present you this afternoon. You can ask your question in the Q&A that's located on the top of your screen, or if you're on your cell phone, it's at the bottom of your screen. Also at the end, and you can ask your question throughout. If we have time, we'll do them as we go. And if you have questions that you would like to ask verbally, it's possible. Simply raise your hand, click on the button, raise my hand, and then we'll open your mic. But we'll do this at the end just to make sure to respect the agenda we have today. So welcome everyone to this webinar on our two new workshops that are going to be given in the winter of 2023. So we have two. The first one is the Secrets to Profitable Milk, and the other one is the Store Behind Your Heifer Inventory. And we will have Simon Jeté-Nantel and Rodrigo Molano that will present you the content because they have developed those two workshops. So thank you very much, Simon and Rodrigo, to be here with us today. So let's start just with the next slide with our workshops. So as I said, we have two, and they will be given from February to April 2023. You can register easily on your MySite account, and if you don't have a MySite account, that's no problem. You can call customer service, and they'll be able to help you with that. So if we go to our next slide, I would like to thank our sponsors. So we have Desjardins, les collectifs régionaux en formation agricole, and we have a third one as well, Farm Credit Canada. So thank you very much for your support for those, this training session, 2023 training session. So without waiting more, we'll start our webinar with the secrets to profitable milk. So Simon, I'll let you, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks and welcome to our webinar on those workshops. So the workshop that I've contributed to prepare is called The Secrets to Profitable Milk. We thought basically that given the economic context of 2023, it was a good time to get together around the table and share our thoughts and our ideas about how can we make our milk production a bit more profitable. The economic context is kind of asking us to do that. And so we don't necessarily pretend to have all of the secrets, although we've worked to try to identify some key things that most profitable farms are doing and share that with you. But we also know that it's by sharing our different experiences that we can find solutions that are applicable to your context. So we have within Lactanet, we have a technical economic team, which I'm leading. And then we have some collaborators, which are longtime dairy advisors. And so within the workshops, I'll be there, and one of our dairy advisor will be there as well to answer the more technical aspects of things. And I'll handle more on the economics and management side of things as per my training, as you can see there. So the format for those training is going to be a group discussion. So basically, we're going to be introducing. We've crunched a number of data from different provinces, and we will share that with you, share our insights. But we also expect that everybody around the table will contribute to the discussion by sharing either good things they've done and not so good things, maybe that they're willing to share, like some maybe mistakes not that they don't want others to repeat. But the idea is to sit around the table and share experiences and knowledge. So, and we can do that. I'll show you later on. We've structured that around the various topics, and we will let you guide us through which topic you want to cover first. So as I mentioned, the 2023 economic context is a hard one. We know about input costs, we know about labor shortages, interest rates. And so the idea here is to try to help you bridge the operational decisions you're making, the more technical decisions you might be making with the herd in the barn, or even to some extent in the field, and make sure that it makes some economic sense, whatever operational decisions you are taking. So some of our objectives is to know your cost and be able to compare, to analyze some of those costs, target the expenses to work on. And as I mentioned, we'll want to discuss and exchange those ideas that you could potentially introduce in an action plan. So we will focus obviously mostly on the cost control. So there is a competitive environment. And so we will ask you whether you know your costs, and we will give you some references which you could use to compare yourself, and to target maybe some expenses that are worth addressing in your specific situations. And the idea is to exchange during the workshop, as is mentioned here, is to exchange on what might be applicable in your given situation in terms of potential solutions. And so I think it's always interesting to try to understand where we stand and try to share with others what could be done. So overall, we want to focus on identifying opportunities, get into solution mode, and maybe review and challenge our decision-making process. As we will see, good management is all about making the right decisions. So how do we go about that? What kind of information do we base our decisions on? What kind of indicators do we go off of? So it's all about sharing that information and trying to improve our decision making. So we will start with expense distribution. As I mentioned, we have a lot of data that we've crunched, and to try to identify some of the secrets in making more profitable milk. And so it starts by breaking down the cost of production. So as you see here, feeding is feeding of the milking herd is almost 35% of cost. Rearing is 17%. What you see here are your medium long-term assets, so interests and maintenance, repairs, and depreciation. That accounts for about 23% of the overall cost. So I think that's a subject that we need to address in the 2023 economic context. So we will want to bring you there. We can also talk about labor, but and other direct costs or other variable charges, which would be mostly related to herd management. One question that we asked ourselves as we went through all those data is, how much is good management worth? We looked at two different groups. Each group here represented by a color, and we looked at their cost of production. In this specific context, the difference is about $5 to $10 per hectoliter. And those are farms that came, they're evolving. They were evolving in similar economic context. And so in the difference, the residual, we tend to attribute most of it to good management. And so based on this, what we can say is that, well, for a farm which has 100 kilos of quota, good management should be worth about 50 to 80 grams a year, depending on which year you'd pick here in the last 5. So we think it's worth spending some time asking ourselves what is good management and how can we improve on that. So as we define here, we include into that operational management. So what's going on in the barn, your production per cow, feed indicators or indicators in terms of repro or your rearing program, management of purchases and suppliers. That's also one area that is included in good management. So how much do we pay for different inputs? How do we manage the agreements we may have with providers, suppliers? And we'll also deal with human resource management, work efficiency, or we can go on to employee, how to manage employees, and obviously financial management, as I was just hinting, with the weight that our mid to long-term assets are imposing in terms of cost. So it's all about making the right decisions. And so that's going to be the focus of our discussions around the table. We asked ourselves as we went through all this, through the preparation, is like, what are the best doing? When we say best, we talk about the most profitable ones. It's not always so simple to understand. There are different ways to get there, but at the same time, we've been able to identify a number of things, basically common ground between those that are most profitable. And so it can be difficult to make a direct link with some operational decisions and some economic indicators, but we do have some hints on that, and we think that gathering around the table, exchanging our own experiences, we can make some inroads on that, and we can identify some key things that we can do. As I mentioned, that's going to be our menu for our discussions. We will let the group decide, except for the long-term assets, which we will want to cover. But the other topics, different groups, the different discussion groups may spend more time talking about feeding, other more about replacement or labor, depending on the interest in the room. Asset management, as I said, given the current context, we know the interest rate went up, the asset costs, all the equipment costs went up. If any one of you has tried building a new barn, you would know about that recently. So the clear message that has been sent to us in 2022 is that we need to rationalize our asset. Does not necessarily mean we have to sell out, but we need to think about how we're using them in most efficient way. What I have here is a way to measure how efficient we are with our assets. So that's the amount of assets, the number you see there is the amount of asset needed to generate $1 of revenue, okay? And we see that our average group over all those years needed almost $7 of assets to generate $1 of revenue, while our most profitable group needed less than $6. So it's a $1 difference in assets that is needed to generate the same dollar of revenue. When we think how much an asset requires in terms of maintenance, the interest on it, depreciation on it, for a farm of 100 kilos, we estimated that it's about 40 grand of expenses that the average group is incurring on above our best managed, our most profitable farms. So we will want to talk about that, and we will not want to ask ourselves questions like, do we need to own all those assets? Are there any alternatives? What are they? What are the pros and cons of each of those alternatives? And we will want to hear about your own experiences about these different ways of controlling assets, basically. Are some of our assets underutilized? So we'll get to the utilization of our asset, try to make the most out of them. What are some of the solutions, potential solutions there? And obviously, in the long term, when we're planning, how do we plan our investments? What kind of data do we get? How do we analyze that? What's the best way to go about it? And we'll want, we have, as I said, we have some insights to share, but we will want to hear your stories and what you've done well or not so well in your own experience. Feeding, obviously, we'll talk about, it's an important expense. So what kind of data do you use to try to track your feeding costs and try to control your feeding costs? How do you go about that? Obviously, we have some solutions in-house, and we have some of our own experiences to share. Managing purchases and stocks, risk management, what kind of tools are out there? We will want to address, or we'll invite discussion on that. And again, on labor, we will invite discussion on how efficient are you using the labor that you have, foreign employees or managing employees in general. We invite discussion on all of those topics. What's our target audience? Well, anybody interested in improving their economic performance and willing to kind of challenge or share their decision making tools and processes, because we think the pressure that is being put on the dairy industry from an economic standpoint is a good time to try to improve our decision making, and that those improvements will last for the foreseeable future. It's not going to last only for 2023. So we can, the silver lining, if you want, of the current situation is that's going to force us into making better decisions and improving our profitability for the following years. In terms of information, so if any one of you are wondering if what's the information that might be needed to participate, none of it is needed. So you can come in and just participate in the discussion. Obviously, if you do have some knowledge of your costs, that can be handy. So if you have participated in some studies, or if you have consultants that have done that for you, then it's good to bring that so we can benchmark. We will also provide you with an online form. So if you're into that, if you want to spend a little bit of time to put your numbers in there, we will provide you with some estimates also that you can use to benchmark. And also there's a chance that we will talk about feed margin. And so if you have different sources of information about your feed margin, if you can bring that to the discussion, that will be useful, but none of it is mandatory. So I don't know if we have any questions, or should we move on to our second workshop, Catherine?
Thank you, Small, for your presentation. I remind everyone, if you have questions, you can ask them throughout the presentations in the Q&A. And at the end, if you have questions to ask verbally, no problem. You simply raise your hand and we'll open your mic. For now, there is no question in the Q&A, so let's continue to Rodrigo's presentation, and don't hesitate again to ask questions in the Q&A. As a reminder also for everyone that have joined us a little later than 1:30, no problem. We have this webinar recorded, so you'll receive the recording shortly. So thank you, and Rodrigo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Simon, also for your presentation. And hi, everyone. I'm happy to be able to present what we're preparing for you all in terms of this workshop, which has been named the story behind your heifer inventory, get it right and be more profitable. Again, even if I'm the lucky one presenting it to you, there is really a whole team behind the development of this workshop. A lot of thought and effort put on behind it, and I'll probably make just a special mention to Melinda, Patrick, Karen, and Valerie, who will be in the front line, as presenters and and facilitating the discussion throughout the winter in these workshops. So we with this workshop, we have really specific objectives in terms of what we would like you to get. The first is to calculate and evaluate the replacement needs using your data and your objectives. So we will take that into consideration, and obviously create open the floor and the space to have an open discussion, compare and analyze the different parameters that we have regarding the rearing period that is often a little bit overseen. And then consider and discuss different strategies, also using whatever experiences you might bring to the table, and with that, help to establish a good breeding and genetic selection practices that will help us to optimize our heifer inventories, correct potential inventory imbalances that we might encounter, and evaluate optimize the room as a whole. So why we were looking at that, I think most of you know, and that the rearing program or area is really an area of opportunity. Just as an example, last year in our workshop, Sustainable and Profitable is Possible, we really identify the heifer area as an area that had major impact in uh, because the cost that as Simon was alluding to, the in the structure of a cost, production cost is an important factor, but also in the effects that what we do during this process will have in the future and long-term productivity and profitability. So taking that as a base, and particularly as mentioned by Simon, also the current economic context kind of uh, force us to think more about what we do internally. So it's important to uh, think more about the heifer area. There is many things that influence that, and all the externalities that we are really experiencing in this moment. But we believe that under these circumstances, we really have to focus on what we is under our control, and the rearing area is one of those that we have a great opportunity to go optimize and rationalize as well. So, uh, you know, uh, with the stats also, that this was facilitated through Simon also and his team. The rearing cost of one heifer is an important expenses. And this is a stats from Quebec, and there is some fixed cost, some variable cost, which is the biggest part and probably one of the most interesting ones, that as we can really modify or impact, because are dependent on the number of heifers. And there is some costs that we normally identify as more linked to those variable costs, but there is other costs that we probably not always consider, but they are there, and we can reduce, optimize, and rationalize. Again, we're gonna see how touch different points in the rearing process, and how we can reduce this total cost per heifer, but also by uh, asking ourselves how we can really rationalize also the number of heifers. We can reduce the total cost of rate or of raising heifers and replacements in the short, medium, and long term. So that's basically what we have in mind. And again, we with this workshop, we had as in focus on the inventory. This is something that we probably don't think about so often as we would like. Sometimes it's kind of a taboo, and sometimes kind of complex also, like how to determine a needs that we're comfortable with, and more importantly, how to get there could be complex and difficult. So what we have tried to prepare is to organize and simplify all these concepts in different chapters. The first one, which is the core kind of thing, is that we're gonna go to with your data and calculate the replacement needs, balance that out with the current inventories, and in the subsequent chapters, try to bring along the other factors that also are involved in how to get to the good number and to get to an action plan. So my breeding program, selection of heifers, especially on the genetic side, and my rearing program as well. So I'm gonna give some details on that in the next slides. In the first chapter, again, we're gonna try to discuss together further in terms of like some of the technical aspects that are involved in this process, as calling rate, herd productivity, mortality, age of first calving, and also a non-technical, probably more emotional, as the fear of not having enough heifers. By discussing this, we hope that we can facilitate a better risk management, and also better decisions in terms of what actions can we take based on a good calculation, and yeah, and move forward with that. So, for example, just as and this example we're having dealing with a herd with 100 cows that is using a breeding strategy using 100% conventional semen, has a mortality in the first 24 hours of 5% and then a completion rate of 5% as well. So with that, for example, we're going to calculate the number of heifers that we're going to get from that process. So 52 heifers, calves born in a year. If we lose two during this process, that will left us with 49 heifers ready to enter um, to the production herd. However, when we consider the needs that we really have, um, 100 cows at 30% colony rate, plus the non-completion rate, that will help. That will mean that we'll need around 32 heifers per year, and in balance, that will mean that the 49 and the 32, we have 17 heifers extra that will really represent around $72,000 a year. So that's a hidden cost that we in this particular example will be able to capitalize and be more efficient. And the idea is that with this kind of example, we can do the same exercise with your data and use this as a feed for discussion in the subsequent sessions. So where will be this data coming from? For those that are already clients with Lactanet, we will use the data that we have in our database, and so you don't need to do any effort in that. For those that are not yet clients of Lactanet, so you'll receive a confirmation email after you register, and with a link that will bring you to an online form in which you can fill up all the information that you can or you wish. This is not for any means mandatory. We encourage because it's helpful to have some data that will give some ground to the discussion. However, the only thing that you really need is just the willingness to come, discuss, and be open to the ideas and discussions we'll have during the workshops. In the second chapter will be the breeding program. We realize that even this is going to be have an effect in the long term. Really, is going to be the structure and the base of having a good balance and inventories. As we're going to discuss semen selection strategies, sex semen, conventional beef semen as well, the genetic selection of the cows and heifers that will get that genetics, and especially how to bring it down to the farm so you can implement it. We realize that by doing that we can prevent from the breeding part to have an imbalance in the inventory, to have too many heifers or not enough. So that will be a good chunk of our workshop as well. We're gonna be using some tools that we have in hand as a dynamic spreadsheet in which, for example, here with the example farm that we were talking earlier, we can consider, a number of cows, some reproductive parameters, and together we can get to a discussion in how using the different semen type available, we can get to the good balance between the needs and the heifers produced. So the idea is that after we do this exercise together, you can bring it and apply it to your farm. The other one was a subsequent kind of thought is that even, for example, for the example farm, we need 32 heifers per year, which will mean around 3 heifers per month. We also will see how we can do that better, not to have only the right number in a year, but at the right moment, considering that we might need more of these heifers calving out in the fall, so we can do the additional days of production. So that's another thing that we'll be discussing during our sessions. Chapter 3, very briefly, is not only getting the right number, but also having those that we really want to raise and to be part of our herd. So we're going to bring some elements in terms of genetics and performance, as far as occurrence of disease and growth, so we can pick up early on those that we're going to keep in the herd. In the chapter 4, here it says 3, but it's 4. Sorry about that. We really wanted to see how in the process of raising that heifer, we can optimize it. So we probably need to raise less heifers for the same needs of replacement, and do in a way that also we make sure that every heifer that we produce is the best heifer that we can possibly raise. So, and the first one, we're gonna evaluate the heifers, how the heifers performing. We're going to consider some strategies to really assess growth and how is that outcome going on. And we're going to bring some, latest findings in terms of research and stuff like that, that we would like to put out and available to you so you can consider to implement it in your own rearing program. So you are up to date. So normally when we are like talking about the rearing program, we always start at the calf, but this time we wanted to move it around and start with the final product, which is the first lactation heifer, and evaluate if the gains that we targeted or expected are achieved. Are we having an enough mature heifer at the end of lactation, and how well we're doing it? And in a subsequent phase, we would like to compare that performance or that weight with the mature cows and see how, if these heifers that we're producing are really going with the potential that they have, which is normally independently what you do with weight at calving of production, and the first lactation should be 82 to 85% of the mature cow. So that's something that we would like to start our discussion with. And then using that as a base and integrating the basic concepts of the target growth system, we would like to see if we identify possible opportunities for the herd to identify where the growth is not as good or not, or which we could capitalize in terms of management of breeding or number of heifers based on the growth that we may be having. So that was going to be an important part. Yeah, sorry, Simon. And then in this part will be, this is one of the new things that we would like to put out and discuss with you, the new recommendations, for example, in terms of passive transfer immunity, not only because it will help us to get healthier calves, but also in how we get there, how we can really follow that recommendation, and we can hit the objectives that they're proposing to us, from the newborn management through the colostrum and transition milk. We will discuss those different pieces of advice and updates that are coming recently to get to a good outcome and good start in the calf area. So with that, at the end, we really hope that you can walk out from the workshop with a complete and objective analysis of your heifer inventory, that you can probably realize some opportunities that you can have in terms of the number of heifers you raise. Identify some priority areas so you can improve and you can start your action plans, and some possible solution that can be evaluated and implemented with the help of your current assistance or different support from the field. So that's the idea here. The target audience, we really think that every herd can benefit from the information that we're providing, but we're really targeting those, or we think that those herds that have a heifer to cow ratio percentage equal or greater than 0.6 or 60%, or an age of first calving equal or greater than 24 months, can really benefit from this. Um, but at the same time, those that either don't have enough room for their heifers, or they're planning to construct a new facility, will also help from knowing from the exercise. You can really identify some solutions that can help you planning. Every herd that has the interest to improve the rearing management, again, we have different pieces that will help you to update your rearing program and probably implement some of the ideas that we have, even if you're hitting the other two targets. And any referred herd from workshop number one that with Simon and his team probably have identified that the rearing area, the replacement area is another opportunity. Well, we'll be happy to have you with us and go deeper in the different factors that this might entertaining for the analysis. So with that, I will thank you everyone for your attention, and I think that now we will have time for questions. If there is any, um, please let us know. I'll hope to have many of you in the workshops that we're gonna have this winter. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rodrigo, for the presentation of your workshop. And thank you again, Simon, for your presentation as well. I don't have any questions in the Q&A. You can still write them right now, or if you would like to ask a questions, verbally, you can click on raise your hand and we'll open your mic. While you do this, while you decide if you would like to ask some questions or not, I will just remind you that you can register to those workshops on my site. It's going to be the big orange button on the top right corner on the main page. If you don't have a MySite account, as I said, you can talk to your technician, advisor, or call our customer service, and they'll tell you what to do next. So thank you very much again, everyone. And I would like to thank again our sponsors. So we have Desjardins, les collectifs régionaux en formation agricole, as well as Farm Credit Canada. So I don't think we have questions coming up. But if you missed any parts, don't worry, we'll have the recording up and running shortly. So thank you again, Rodrigo. Thank you, Simon, for everything, and
You're
thank
welcome.
you everybody for. Thank you, everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thank you again.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.